Georges River Council, I declare the meeting open at 7:02 p.m. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of all lands, waters, sky in the Georges River area. I pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who live, work and meet on these lands. If I could ask everyone to be standing for the national anthem.
Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains that let us sing, advance Australia fair. Beneath the radiant Southern Cross, we'll toil with hearts and hands to make this Commonwealth of ours renowned of all the lands. For those who've come across the seas with boundless plains to share, with courage let us all combine to advance Australia fair. In joyful strains that let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Thank you. If you could remain standing for a prayer from our General Manager. I'll pass it on to Dave Tuxford. My apologies. We have someone here to provide the prayer. Sorry, thank you. I didn't see you there. Yes, please, just at the front left.
We ask them to pray. We all join palm together. Okay, it's done. May kindness, compassion, joy, and equality pervade all worlds. May we cherish and build affinity to benefit all beings. May charm, pure land, and peace inspire equality and patience. May our gratitude give us vows. Namo Sakamuni Buddha. Namo Sakamuni Buddha. Namo Sakamuni Buddha. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That prayer was led by a Buddhist representative from the St. George Women's Interfaith Network. Thank you. Please be seated. Do I have any apologies for tonight's meeting? There being none, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, request to attend meeting by audiovisual link. There were no requests to attend audiovisual link tonight, so we move over to the next item of the agenda. Staff and public are reminded that this meeting is being recorded for minute-taking purposes and is also being webcast on Council's website. This recording will be made available on Council's website. Code of meeting practice. The order of business is as shown in the agenda, which has been made available. Staff and public are reminded that this meeting is open. Doors to the meeting room are to remain open unless the meeting moves into closed confidential session according to section 14 of the Code of Meeting Practice. Only if the meeting moves into a closed session will the public broadcasting of the meeting be suspended. Council's Code of Meeting Practice prohibits the electronic recording of meetings without the express permission of Council. Mobile phones must be turned to silent during the meeting. Next item on the agenda is disclosures of interest. Councillors, I have a number of disclosures of interest. I'll read them out. Councillor Elmere disclosed a non-significant non-pecuniary interest in item CCL 08523, applications pursuant to Council Award Discretionary Fund Policy, for the reason that my son plays in the Cogger Cougars Junior Rugby League Football Club in the under-7s. Councillor Elmere will remain in the meeting and take part in consideration and voting on this item. Councillor Ficarra disclosed a non-significant non-pecuniary interest in item CCL 08723, Memorandum of Understanding, turf wicket utilisation, for the reason that Kevin Green, a patron of the St George District Cricket Club, and her were candidates in the same group at the 2021 local government elections. Councillor Ficarra will remain in the meeting and take part in consideration and voting on this item. Councillor Stratakopoulos disclosed a significant non-pecuniary interest in item CCL 08523, applications pursuant to Council Award Discretionary Fund Policy, for the reason that he serves on the committee of the Greek Orthodox Church of Cogra. Councillor Stratakopoulos will not be present during the consideration of this item. Councillor Katras disclosed a significant non-pecuniary interest in item CCL 08523, applications pursuant to Council Award Discretionary Fund Policy, for the reason that a grant has been proposed by a councillor on behalf of the Greek Orthodox parish and community. And
Mr. Mayor, could I correct that, please? It's a pecuniary interest. Thank you.
Sorry, that's been corrected by Councillor Katras as a pecuniary interest, for the reason that the grant has been proposed by a councillor on behalf of the Greek Orthodox parish and community, and my office provides architectural consultancy work every now and again. Therefore, I will not participate in the deliberations of this item. Public participation on items on the agenda. In lieu of addressing council in person, written submissions were received by the following members of the public. There are a number of speakers registered for tonight's meeting. I would remind the speakers that speakers have a 3-minute time limit. The first sound that you hear indicates that you have 1 minute remaining, and the second sound, at the second sound, please just conclude your comments. The first speaker for tonight's meeting is Tanya Katsanis, who is here in person, and Tanya will be speaking on CCL 08023 and ENV 03323, Companion Animal Identification and Desexing Program. Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you. Firstly, my name is Tanya Katsanis, and I need to declare that I work in the City Futures team here at Georges River Council. Today, I'm representing you as a community member on the issue of Companion Animal Identification and Desexing Program. So with my 3 minutes, I'll start. I want to start with the issue of feral cats. We talk about the stray or unowned cats as feral. This is wrong, incorrect, and very misleading, and we're pretty much giving the wrong identification to these cats in our area. Feral cats are actually ones that have no reliance on humans for any type of food. Secondly, I do want to congratulate Council on the issue of the $50,000 desexing program and identification, but we really need to broaden this scope. At the committee meeting, we identified about 8,700 cats, 46% of which are not desexed. I'm here to tell you that for every 100,000 residents, there are approximately 6,000 stray cats. So in our LGA of 153,000 residents, we have approximately 9,000 stray cats on top of the 8,700 we've addressed at that committee meeting. So when I ask you to broaden the scope, the reason is we need to look for those cats that are being cared for but not owned. So what's up on the screen there is something that Campbelltown Council does. This is their desexing program that has been running for a couple of years. Due to its success, it's continuing. I also wanted to raise with you that Canterbury Bankstown and Fairfield councils and Parramatta councils run very similar desexing programs. So there is no reason why our council can't do the same if we are really passionate about managing this cat population. Finally, I do want to take this opportunity to talk about a community CAP program which is further down the track. Emeritus Professor Jackie Rand, who is also the founder of the Australian Animal Welfare Foundation, has been doing some wonderful research in managing our CAP programs around the country. So I would like to table, it's a 2-page little sort of information brochure on the work that she's done. And what it will highlight to you is the profound positive effects that this type of CAP management implementation program can have, including reducing the cost to councils in terms of managing CAP populations. I am going to leave it there because you've got another 12 behind me, but please broaden the scope. Let's be serious, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tanya. Our next speaker is Matthew Allison, who has got a written submission on report number NM 05523, cessation of use of second-generation anticoagulant rodenticides.
Good evening, councillors and staff. I would encourage you all to support Councillor Marnie's motion to remove second-generation rodenticides from GRC properties. The baits containing the hemorrhagic poison bryamylidine are spread far and wide around the perimeters of council premises like the Roberts Avenue Council Depot and Olds Park Library, to name a few. The active ingredient in this poison is not just deadly to its target species, rodents, its insidious talent applies to the knock-on poisoning of native birds, particularly raptors like larger owls and hawks that feed naturally on mice and rats. The poison that is ingested by the rodent does not instantly kill, but will slow its movements, making it an easy catch for our local native owls. The problem is when the owl chows down on the affected prey, it too ingests the poison, and the dose is enough to kill the larger animal as well. A slow death from internal bleeding. The point that council has these poison baits is that at the council depot in particular, the baits are laid out along the perimeter fence, a long way from habitable buildings, and are actually encouraging rodents to enter the depot to feed on these delicious baits. These affected rodents are then picked off by our local owls when they leave the depot, and you already know how that plays out. I believe this council takes a stance on rejecting this poison and returns to first-generation rodenticide like warfarin, a slower-acting poison but less deadly on predatory species like our owls. Then it helps send a message to the public, who are encouraged to purchase the owl poison by larger retail shops, that they need to be aware of the consequences of their actions. Do we want to have powerful boo book and barn owls in our local area? Then switch to the less harmful first-generation rodenticide for your control method, if you must rely on poisons at all. Thank you, Matt Allison.
Thank you. Next speaker is Susan Lisson, in person on item NM 05423, establishment of Bush Care Group in Georges River. Thank you.
Dear Mayor, councillors, council staff and members of the public, I would like to provide some background information to Councillor Wang's motion regarding establishing a Bush Care Group in Hurstville Ward so that volunteers can learn about, protect and increase the native biodiversity in our local parks and reserves. Timothy Reserve, which is located near Hurstville Oval, has been my family's local park since I arrived from the US 35 years ago. I lived in apartment blocks nearby and brought my children to the park daily. I was immediately drawn to the diversity and uniqueness of Australia's flora and fauna and wanted to learn more about the local plants. Eventually, I became involved in bush care and looked for my quiet time in nature and satisfaction of transforming a weed-infested area into a thriving natural habitat with the encouragement of others with similar interests. I've witnessed many changes to Timothy Reserve in the last 35 years, but finally, in June 2020, Timothy Reserve was given a grant from GRC for 400 endemic tube stock plants. The plants flourished, but so did the weeds that rose up from the wood chips. I volunteered to be by myself during COVID and encourage understory plantings and native ground covers so that wood chips wouldn't be needed in the future. Unfortunately, the Timothy Reserve plantings were not designed as bushland, so ground covers were removed and many of the interesting plants were removed as wood chips were required to fulfill the requirements of a suburban park. Sadly, the original goal to provide biodiversity was not mentioned to our parks maintenance staff. Timothy Reserve looks much better than it did when it was weed infested 3 years ago, but it could be much better. More understory planes need to replace the ones that were removed, and native ground covers would require much less weeding and less wood chips. With 3 to 10 volunteers once a month with a bush care officer helping us, we could make a stunning native garden that everyone in the neighborhood or visiting Hurstville Oval could be proud of. Eventually, this idea could spread to other parks and reserves in our area. Here are a few bullet points for you to consider. Many of the people that use Timothy Reserve and other local parks in Hurstville are new to Australia, just like I was 35 years ago. Like me, they are probably in awe of Australia's unique plants and animals and curious about ways they can help the environment. Bush care encourages community involvement and for different cultures to learn from one another. When local parks and reserves are well maintained, they are less likely to become litter infested and untidy. By having the Bush Care team working at different reserves throughout Hurstville, residents can learn about all of the amazing little pocket parks that their suburb has to offer. Convincing people to weed their local park for free isn't easy. Sometimes I wonder why I bother. However, I believe that Councillor Wang has the ability to inspire volunteers to beautify their local parks. And if anyone can do it, he can. Thank you for listening and considering Wang's motion.
Thank you, Susan. Our next speaker tonight is Jennifer Parry, who is here in person speaking on report number ASS 02523, Beverly Hills Commuter Car Park. Thank you, Jennifer.
That's right from the email. So
Good evening, Council, the staff, the Chairperson, the Mayor and members of the public. Tonight I wish to speak to you about an ongoing project which is Beverly Hills Commuter Car Park. There's been a lot of ongoing engagement with Transport New South Wales and Council, and including the Council, the Georges River Council Access Inclusion Committee, which I happen to be the chair of. There have been some ongoing challenges, and the position of the committee and council is that, as proposed at the moment, that the project for this car park should not proceed as is. The main reason being to do with the inadequate or insufficient catering for accessible car parking spaces inside the proposed commuter car park. Transport New South Wales have proposed that car parking spaces will be at Terralong Road in the street. For these to be utilised, it would result in a considerable distance and also needing to utilise King George's Road crossing to access the same station, whilst other commuters would be able to access the station directly via the commuter car park by a set of stairs or by direct access. We believe this is an inequitable solution which does not best serve the community. I implore the work to continue and for Council to continue with its position to advocate for better access. For the long term, it will then be a great benefit. If this does not occur, Council, we're almost certain, will need to rework whatever is built later on and put more spaces in. There is a standard which specifies that for the 200 car spaces, 2 access spaces would be required as part of any indoor inside car park. Ideally, we would need to have sufficient number of access spaces in the commuter car park, and in addition there could be external access spaces so that people would have choice about where to park depending on their needs and businesses in the area. Transport New South Wales and Council have said that obstacles to this proposed changes have been identified, some of which include a tree, insufficient path space to build a lift, and others. Whilst it is healthy and absolutely necessary to identify obstacles, that's only half the work that needs to happen. It is important and absolutely vital that there is an approach which includes looking for solutions to these problems, whether it be removing or relocating a tree, whether it be widening a footpath, whether it be considering other options to complement ensuring equity of access.
If I can ask
Based
you
on
to-
this, I implore people to be advocating and to continue to advocate, as I will as the chair of the Access Inclusion Committee, for a much more equitable, equal access, incorporating universal design. After all, universal design will benefit everyone long term. Thank you for hearing my submission.
Thank you, Jennifer. Our next speaker tonight is David Boitiga, who is here to speak on issues with private certifiers. Thank you, David.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors, and everyone else joining us tonight. My name is David Boitiga. I'm a former resident of Oatley. To begin, I'd like to thank Alison Fury and Deb Mackey, who are here tonight, who are going to describe their horror experiences with private certifiers. I was hoping I'd speak after them, but it doesn't matter because, unfortunately, their stories aren't unique. Some of you might recall that I was here in May 2022. In that council meeting, I described how the bills to contest my neighbour's private certifiers surpassed $100,000 after she approved a house that she knew was substantially larger than permitted and included an invasive pool deck that was 3 times higher than allowed under state law. More recently, Georges River Council itself invested significant resources into seeking compensation after a private certifier wrongly approved an occupation certificate for 1 to 5 Tracy Street in Hurstville. The certifier had apparently failed to notice that the building was missing 81 square metres of commercial space intended for council. While these examples of dodgy certifiers are terrible, the real problem is that similar events are going to continue happening. Let me explain why. Firstly, builders in New South Wales can pay for a private certifier of their choice. This incredible conflict of interest leaves private certifiers feeling that they need to approve whatever is put in front of them to keep customers happy and to compete with rival certifiers. Secondly, although local councils have enforcement powers that allow them to contest private certifiers, doing so is expensive and laborious. So much so that councils, including Georges River Council, rarely exercise these enforcement powers. Thirdly, despite local councils receiving thousands of complaints per year about private certifiers, the Department of Fair Trading has disciplined only 5 certifiers in New South Wales since the end of 2020. Even after my court case, which ended with my neighbour demolishing multiple non-compliant structures and the private certifier paying $20,000 of my legal fees, the certifier wasn't disciplined by Fair Trading. Finally, there's the problem of challenging private certifiers in court. On top of the enormous financial barrier, which typically involves the winner losing tens of thousands of dollars, councils and neighbours only have 90 days after approval to challenge the legal validity of compliant development certificates. Now, anyone that's ever tried to deal with a non-responsive and deceitful certifier knows that 90 days is a ridiculously short time in which to achieve anything. The flaws in the New South Wales private certification system encourage and protect dodgy certifiers, allowing them to wrongly approve development with little fear of consequences. This is hurting residents in the Georges River area, as you've heard and will hear later tonight, and it's hurting people all over New South Wales. The state government needs to fix private certification, and Georges River Council owes it to its constituents to be pushing for this change.
Thank you, David. Our next speaker is Marie Derwin, who will be speaking on proposed motions to Local Government Conference 2 and 3. Thanks, Marie.
Thank you for allowing me to speak about the motion proposed for the New South Wales Local Government Conference. The motion seeks to have the maximum penalty for illegal tree destruction increased. I've done some research and found one of the sections on Council's website shows Council regularly prosecutes offenders for activities that remove or damage trees without authority. The EPA Assessment Act in 1979 provides that the maximum offence in court is $500,000 for an individual and $2 million for a corporation. But another section of their website states penalties range from $15,000 for an individual to $6,000 for a corporation, in the form of a penalty up to the maximum of $5 million for an offence against the EPA Assessment Act of 1979. Putting this confusing information aside, I ask whether the existing penalties deter people from illegally cutting down trees. My discussions with many Oatley residents and other people, including recent media reports, show that this does not deter offences. Too many trees are being felled illegally. So why doesn't the existing regime deter offences? Are the existing penalties too low, or is it they're not being enforced? How are the penalty notices being applied by councils? How many offences result in court action? Or council's website does not show how many. It is obvious that some people are happy to face the fine of a couple of $1,000 cutting down trees to improve the view and improve the value of their property. I spoke to council's meeting earlier this year at the lack of compliance with council's tree protection policies. Of the 11 homes in my small street, 4 engaged unauthorised destruction of trees over the last 2 years. Where any penalties applied? Very few. For those properties, after trees were cut illegally, a permit was issued for the destruction of more trees. I was informed the permit applied for were 6 mature Sydney red gums. I was not able to count the total number of trees felled in this instance, but it was more than twice the number I was told that was covered by the permit, several within the 15-metre foreshore protection zone. When I later inquired what action was taken about these trees being felled in excess of the permit, I was told all works were approved under the permit. Forgive me for wondering, but how is permit to destroy 6 trees becoming a permit
Sorry, Marie, if I
to
can ask,
destroy many trees?
if I can ask you to wrap up, please.
Okay,
Time's over.
all right. Unless council takes real action soon, the native vegetation and creatures that depend on that vegetation are finished.
Thanks,
We have a problem, Houston.
Thanks, Marie. Our next speaker tonight is Deborah Mackey, who is here to speak on NM 05223, issue with private certifiers. Thanks, Deborah.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors. I would like to share mine and my now late mother's horror story in regards to private certifiers. I was a full-time carer for my 85-year-old wheelchair-bound mother, and being built next door to her house of 65 years was a new build being executed via a private certifier. We encountered issues on a daily basis, too many to fit in 3 minutes. I'll list some. 1, their start and finishing times at whatever time they pleased. 2, using mum's front yard to store their building materials to be used when they need it. 3, trucks and workers' vans constantly parking on the council grass verge directly in front of mum's and destroying every blade of grass and making divots in it. Bulldozing and removing trees from my mum's side of her fence with no authority. The attempted removal of a much larger tree on her property, but I was able to stop them as I had caught them in the act and I threatened to get police due to trespass. Constant use of my mum's water, using her front and back garden taps for high pressure washing of their build and using her actual hose which is attached to the side of her house. Again, trespassing and repeatedly told not to. Removing the side back fence and no safety fence put up in its place. The actual new build was only 500 off the backside fence boundary, with a partial wraparound balcony enabling the occupants to reach over and be within mum's backyard with no privacy. I could go on, but the worst that happened was when we arrived home one day with mum to find that she had absolutely no access into her own house, as next door had removed the side fence completely, and in doing this also removed large parts of her cement footpath that led to her access ramp into her house. You could not begin to understand the shock, the disbelief, the despair and outrage that I had thought that could be done to someone so vulnerable. To add insult to injury, no one was able to help. I tried contacting all the people listed for the build. No one was in a hurry to contact me. I tried the police. They were unable to help me. I tried contacting Georges River Council. I was told not their governance, that it was a state issue. I tried the relevant state ministers to be told it was a council issue. In the end, Mum had to live at my house until she could gain entry to hers, which was several weeks later. And even then, the total disregard from the private certifier, as they had built a retaining wall and fence, which now made Mum's side path so narrow, you could only fit a piece of paper between the wheels of her chair and the fence. I'm begging for council to get some fire under your bellies and get this sorted. Fight the state government and get some real planning laws in to protect the little people, not the damn developers.
Thank you, Deborah.
This was such a dreadful and diabolical situation, not just nor fair. I would like to ask if all of you would have liked your mother to go through this.
Thanks, Deborah.
Thank you.
Our next speaker tonight is Matthew Montgomery, who is here to speak on item ENV 03023, exhibition of draft plan of management and master plan for Donnelly Park. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you. Mayor, Council and staff, my name is Matthew. I'm a resident of Connells Point. Thanks for the further opportunity to speak. I'm here today to speak to you regarding ENV 3023, public exhibition of draft plan of management and master plan for Donnelly Park. I would like to thank the consultants and council officers for all the hard work in drafting the master plan. There are many excellent improvements to the park that have been put forward, such as replacing the seawall, upgrading, replacing picnic facilities, and providing an exercise hub. However, I would like to bring to Council's attention Action 21, provide native tree plantings along the park's northern and western boundary between houses with clear stem tree species to minimise the impact to residents' views. This action only takes into consideration the impact of 5 low-lying residents' views by planting clear stem tree species between houses. Connells Point's topography has inclines and hills. The draft master plan does not take into consideration the bulk of the residents positioned higher up in the surrounding streets and how their existing views will be severely impacted by the new tree canopy spread once the trees mature. I purchased my family home 14 years ago and live 150 metres away from the edge of the Northern Park boundary, and the planting of new trees will result in the loss of my family's uninterrupted views. At present, my family enjoy on a daily basis views of the park's amenities, bay and the river activities. I purchased my family home based on the location and the uninterrupted views, as did many of my neighbours. If the trees are planted on the park's northern and western boundary, the view of this amenity will be lost to many of the residents of Terry Street, Lochmarie Crescent, Wisdom Street and Connells Point Road. The entire suburb of Connells Point will be devalued by the impact caused by the trees and the loss of the views. In fact, it will affect the property prices of the whole suburb, regardless of whether residents have a view. For this reason, I would like to suggest a minor change to Action 21 be implemented to the plan. The trees that are planned for Action 21 be moved closer to the playground, with already a number of large trees. It will be beneficial to the picnic and playground area by providing increased shelter and shade. Alternatively, there are also many other parks within the vicinity which could still reach Council's tree planting objectives, such as Redland Place, the southeastern end of Paulton Park, Terry Street Reserve, and Condor Crescent Reserve, with no impact on residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Our next speaker tonight is Annabella Lima, who is here to speak on ENV 03023, again, exhibition of draft plan of management and master plan for Donnelly Park.
Dear Mayor, Councillors and staff, I'm here tonight to speak about the draft master plan for Donnelly Park, specifically Action 21, where it proposes new native tree plantings along the park's northern and western boundary to be placed between houses with unspecified clear stem tree species to minimise impacts to resident views. Upon careful review of this plan, My family and I were very disappointed to see the council have only taken into consideration the impact of the residents' views along the park's edge by planting trees between houses, but no consideration was taken for all the other Connells Point residents with existing views. We realise we don't own views and are not purchasing views when we choose to purchase our properties next to our beautiful Connells Point Bay. But what we are choosing is a beautiful location that sustains our well-being and choice of where to live. A lot of factors are taken into consideration when one purchases a property, and location and surroundings are a major factor in that decision. These trees, while small to start with, will grow to very large trees in the future with large canopy spreads that will restrict and diminish residents' views and devalue our properties. Please don't get me wrong, I love trees and all the benefits they bring, but special consideration should be taken when they cause massive financial and emotional impact to residents that have lived here for many, many years. It is just unreasonable to impact residents who have invested millions of dollars to purchase and renovate homes that continue to enhance Connells Points for all residents, which in turn also increases the value of all Connells Points properties, whether they have a view or not. These open views have been available for the enjoyment of the residents of Connells Points for decades. Action 1 of the master plan states to retain the large western open grass area and local views. This is what the residents want. The planting of new trees in this area will impact local views and the enjoyment that these views currently provide to local residents. I'd like to ask the council carefully consider all of the impacts that the planting of these new trees in the proposed location will bring to the residents of Connells Point. We have many wonderful nature reserves around Connells Points with lots of free space to plant new trees that won't affect the well-being, current views, and impact the property values of all residents of Connells Point and devalue our much-loved suburb. I thank you for this opportunity to speak and truly hope that you will take our feedback into special consideration and relocate the proposed trees to a different location where no Connells Point resident is impacted in any way. Thank you.
Annabella. Our next speaker tonight is Sonia Baxon, who is here to speak on motion NM 05523, cessation of use of second generation anticoagulants.
Hi, councillors, staff and residents. I'm speaking in favour of the motion of cessation of the use of second generation rodenticides. I'll try not to repeat what the previous speaker said, but I've just got some additional points. So once these poisons are ingested by the vermin, it may take the rodent up to a week to die. So they literally stagger around and they get eaten by something. And where the depot is in Roberts Road there, it's within 2 kilometres of Oatley Park. And 2 weeks ago, I was in Oatley Park and I came across a little boodle. They're maybe 30 centimetres. And if you think of the cutest little owl you can imagine, and it was on the ground being attacked by butcher birds and in a bad way. And once they're on the ground, they can be picked off by dogs or by foxes, and it's not good. So I called in the local owl specialist who believed it had consumed too many poison vermin and was now weakened. So because it was a small owl, it doesn't need to swallow too many of the rats or mice to be affected. He didn't know whether the booble would survive, and it was truly heartbreaking. 2 years ago, a very large, powerful owl, which is possibly that big, was found dead at Limekiln Bay with no obvious signs of injury. Again, it was suspected of consuming poisoned vermin. I strongly support the motion for council to stop the use of second generation rodenticides because there are alternatives to use that do not accumulate in the birds or animals who consume the poisoned vermin.
I would also like to suggest that council encourage residents to also not use the second generation rodenticides, perhaps by way of information on council website, information sent out with rates notices, and the e-newsletter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sonia. Our next speaker is Adrian Polwell, who is here to speak on question with notice 03023 on FOGO. Thank you, Adrian.
Good evening, everybody. If you were offered the chance to save $1 million, if you were offered a chance to save $370,000 each year, what would you do? Well, the Penrith City Council has been doing this for 10 years or more, saving $1 million because they introduced FOGO. Everybody in the council knows what FOGO is. Perhaps some of the residents do not know because there's been no education campaign about FOGO, a food organics, garden organics management waste service. The Director of Access, the General Manager, they know this very well. In fact, the Director of Access, the Director of Assets lives in a LGA where they've already introduced FOGO. So I'm here tonight to speak in favour of Peter Marnie's question on notice to say what has happened, because according to the Georges River Waste Strategy dated in, I think it says 13th of June 2020, what have you been doing? It's 3 years or more now. And I really wonder why the Georges River Council has not adapted and implemented the waste strategy that is clearly laid out, that you would be conducting trials on FOGO, you would then be conducting competitive joint tender for waste services, including FOGO. Nothing has happened as far as I can understand. It's incredibly disappointing for the planet because every ton of waste that goes, food waste that goes into the tips around in Menai, that's a ton of carbon that's emitted into the atmosphere. I'm not sure how much carbon or how much waste that the Georges River collects every year, food waste, but it's a huge amount. I am here to make you yet another offer. I need a few more seconds because I can tell you that there is plans for the Menai, for the Cleanaway Resources Park to actually put a FOGO processing facility in place. And you probably know all about this, but I can tell you there's absolutely excitement in my voice to tell you that this processing facility they will have approval by the end of this year, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, and they know that the Sutherland Council, they had a meeting with them and they are super keen to move forward with a potential timeline, so therefore Cleanaway can build this facility. But the Georges River Council is not there. They're not at the table. At least you're not telling us where you are. So I encourage all the councillors, please ask the questions, why not?
Noted. Thank you, Adrian.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ethan Montgomery, who is here to speak on ENV 030-23, exhibition of draft plan of management and master plan for Donnelly Park. Thanks, Ethan.
Mayors, councillors and staff, my name is Ethan and I'm a resident of Connors Point. I'm here to speak to you regarding the draft master plan for Donnelly Park. I was concerned to learn that Action 21, planting new trees, was being proposed for the plan in Donnelly Park, as I feel planting those trees is contradictory to Objective Action 1. Retain the large western open grass area for independent and casual leisure, and also retain local views. The fact the local views of many, including my family, will eventually be lost due to the planting of new trees. I love living in Connells Point and plan to spend the rest of my life living in this beautiful location. I aspire to inherit my family home and wish to preserve the current view for me, my future family, and my future family's ongoing enjoyment. I understand with time, if the trees are planted alongside the park's northern and western boundary, they will grow and the tree canopies will expand to the point where existing views will be lost forever. I'm also concerned for my fellow neighbours and friends who reside nearby, as everybody will be impacted by this change. I often sit on my balcony with my friends and family enjoying the local park and water views. It is very important to me, so I speak today to protect the legacy that I and others in the area will inherit, and want to protect my beautiful wayside suburb from being devalued by Action 21. Please would you strongly consider removing the trees in Donnelly Park master plan and relocating them to one of the many other parks so nobody is impacted by the planting of the trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Ethan. Our next speaker is Alison Fury, who is here to speak on report NM 052-23 issue with private certifiers. Thanks, Alison. Just your microphone, Alison.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Just a bit of my story. A DA was submitted for the property next door to me in May 2020. This DA was approved by the council's LPP in November. The development consent required that a dilapidation report had to be performed and provided to the neighbouring property owners. 5 days prior to any works occurring and prior to the issue of a CC. Despite this not occurring, the certifier issued a construction certificate. There was asbestos around, the place was a mess. No details for the certifier were displayed on the fencing, nor are there any at the moment. The owner failed to comply with the council-approved plans. An area far in excess, ludicrously so, was allowed to be excavated, resulting in damage to my property, but minor. It came out through flooding and so on later on due to the rain. Despite contacting the certifier to complain about the non-compliance, the certifier initially failed to respond to anything. And when he finally did, it was a rote message saying everything was fine, according to plans. I question whether he even attended the site to conduct the mandatory critical stage inspections. A modification application was submitted in August 2021. This one was again determined by the council's LPP, and while it was initially refused, and the owners, they were required to make design changes to the plans. They weren't made. The construction got bigger, closer to my property, and there was more disturbance. While the LPP granted consent to the submitted plans, the consent stipulated that certain design changes were necessary. They weren't made. The LPP stamped plans were marked Issue L, dated 24th of May 2022. The construction certificate plans failed to make the required changes, getting bigger and bigger. And they were significantly different from the LPP plans, and yet was stamped by the private certifier as Issue LCC plans dated August 2022. These plans are not readily available to the public, only through GIPPers, which take 20 working days and are very hard to get any knowledge from because you have such a short time and can't record anything. All professions are governed and held accountable to a regulatory body, whether they be engineers, architects, teachers, doctors. The governance for certifiers through the Department of Fair Trading, and yet there seems to be no accountability for certifiers who are dishonest. The system is broken and it needs to be changed. My entire street and neighbourhood are so concerned about what's happening here. If it happens to me, it will happen to them. There appear to be hardly any repercussions for not complying with the legislation, and an individual can shop around for a certifier who will willingly turn a blind eye and accept payment for this job, and the rest he's going to receive from the builder. My house has had total invasion of privacy, massive anxiety, unnecessary time used, and we've lost faith. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Our next item on the agenda is confirming the minutes of the previous meetings, CCL 079-23. Do I have a mover for that motion? Move. Yeah, sorry, if I can kindly ask if that microphone can be turned off so we can hear the councillors. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Stratokopoulos, seconded by Councillor Borg. All those in favour say aye. All those against, I declare that carried.
Sorry, Mary Rawlings. Microphone is
Next item on the agenda is condolences. Do I have any condolence motions tonight? There is one from Councillor Wang. I'll pass over to you, Councillor Wang.
Firstly, thank you. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So I offer my condolence for the passing of John Kelly. It's very hard to miss John Kelly if you pass by Hurstville train station from time to time. The Basque guitarist singer regularly performed at the bottom of the escalator outside the Westpac Bank on Forest Road, Hurstville. Miss Kelly was a resident of Penshurst and passed away at the age of 80 in St. George's Hospital on the 7th of August 2023. So I have seen Mr. John Kelly perform many times. He liked to play classic love songs, and I still remember how he played Country Road. His music added such a tender touch to the busty city life of Hurstville. So I personally had only brief encounters with him, exchanging smiles when given small appreciation. But when I read his story, I really appreciate he has become part of our local history at Hurstville. It may take some time for the Hurstville residents to realize Mr. John Kelly has left us forever. But when they do, I'm certain they will miss him just like I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wang. Councillor Mort also has a condolence motion. Councillor Mort.
My condolence motion is for Mary Archer, who passed away after a short illness on September 17th at the age of 85. Mary was a life member of North Ramsgate Amateur Swimming Club and the Carina RSL Day Club, established to assist and returned servicemen and women with day excursions and functions. She was introduced to the Day Club 38 years ago when she took 8 returned service people to the RSL to introduce them around, and she never left. She also served on the committee of the Australian Air League, Riverwood Hornet Squadron, where she transported and prepared cadets for their parades on weekends. The organisation met in one of the old army huts within the Riverwood Housing Commission area. Consequently, most of these cadets came from single-parent families, so the squadron became a second home to them and helped to give them some needed stability and direction. In addition, on the committee of the Waratah Slimmers Club, where she was a long-time member and treasurer of the Padstow branch, Mary's association with North Ramsgate Amateur Swimming Club dates back to 1970. Right up until her recent passing, she was on the committee and for many years occupied the role of chief judge. As a current member of the swimming club, I can personally vouch for Mary's wonderful service and her personality and character will be most definitely missed each Sunday morning when we swim together. The Carina RSL Day Club and the Waratah Slimmers Club were highly valued by many people who relied on them, and Mary's diligent service to make their lives more enjoyable. Mary was rightly awarded the Order of Australia for exceptional community service. And today, on behalf of so many people from our local community, I salute you, Mary, and thank you. You are certainly one of a kind. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mort. Are there any other condolence motions? There being none, if I can kindly ask if everyone could be upstanding to pay a moment's respect. You may be seated. Our next item on the agenda is committee reports. The first committee report being the report of Environment and Planning Committee held on the 11th of September 2023. I'll pass over to the chair of that committee, Councillor Lansbury. Okay, we'll move over to the chair of the committee now, who will be Councillor Marnie. Councillor Marnie, do I have a motion from you?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to move that the Environmental and Planning Committee recommendations for item ENV 03023 to ENV 03423 as detailed below be adopted by council. Thank you.
I have a motion from Councillor Marnie. Do I have a seconder?
Can I have a question?
Sure.
Is that now?
What I'll do is I'll ask for a seconder first. I've seconded by Councillor Borg, and I'll take the question now from Councillor Jamieson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question after the speaker in regards to the cats. Could we just confirm that we're not focused on just solely owned cats? We are looking at and investigating that. What's the word that's used? Partly owned cats or people that are responsible for cats would be looked into the desexing program.
I'll pass it over to the director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Jamieson. Look, we will. I don't have resources to do that program yet, so it will depend if I get the $50,000 in the 24-25 budget. But as part of doing that program, we will have a look at what type of matters, what type of things we can do in relation to cat control. But I think you are aware that we can only retain cats in 3 situations: when they're a threat to life, when they're in a wildlife protection area, or when they're in a food area. So, but that's in relation to retaining. But in relation to desexing, the cats have to be owned, and I'm assuming, yes, they can. People can bring them in, but we will look at how that works if we are successful in getting the funding next year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'll put it for discussion. Is there any discussion on this item? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against, I declare that carried. Next item on the agenda is the Finance and Governance Committee meeting held on the 11th September 2023, CCL 081-23. The chair of the committee, Councillor Jamieson. Do I have a motion?
Thank you. My recommendation is that the Finance and Governance Committee recommendations for items FIN 03523 to FIN 036-23 as detailed below be adopted by council.
Do I have a seconder for that motion?
I'll second that.
Councillor Borg, seconded. Any discussion on this item, councillors? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against, I declare that carried. The next motion is CCL 082-23, report of the Assets and Infrastructure Committee meeting held on the 11th of September 2023.
Mr. Mayor, I wish to pull out on that committee report ASS 025-23.
Okay, I'll have a motion first. Motion by Councillor Koniarski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I'd just like to congratulate you on your newly elected mayoralty, and further to that, I'd like to thank outgoing Mayor Councillor Nick Catchus on a great job over the last couple of years, and thank Deputy Mayor Councillor Lansbury on her exceptional work as well. So I move item CCL 082-24, report of the Assets and Infrastructure Committee meeting held on 11th of September. Items ASS 023-24 to ASS 027-23, with the exception of ASS 026-23 Renown Park Field 2 reconstruction, and the one Councillor Simonson referred to, which was ASS 025.
Do you need that repeated?
I'm sorry, we need to pull out the tender report as well and vote on that separately.
Yes, sorry. I included that in that first bit. So ASS 026-23/27/ferry-23 T with 23 007 Renown Oldfield is to be voted on separately.
Okay. I have that motion moved by Councillor Konyarski. Do I have a seconder for that motion, please?
I'll second Mr. Mayor.
Seconded to Councillor Stratokopoulos. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against, I declare that carried. Now move over to those items that were withdrawn from that. First one being, if I could be assisted here with the numbers, sorry. Oh, 025.
ASS 02.
So yeah, ASS 025-23. The Beverly Hills Commuter Car Park. Councillor Symington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to pull this out because at the Assets and Committee meeting.
Councillor Symington, I'll just for a motion first, and then if you wish to talk.
Yeah, I move AS 0-25-23 Beverly Hills Commuter Car Park.
So Councillor Symington moves that motion. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Fakara. Councillor Symington, the floor's to you.
Thank you. At the Assets and Infrastructure Committee meeting, Part D was added that the General Manager refer this matter to the Australian Human Rights Commission by writing to the Acting Disability Discrimination Commissioner at the Australian Human Rights Commission, Emeritus Professor Rosalind Crouch AM, and by lodging an Australian Human Rights Commission complaint form via the AHRC website. I wanted to thank Jennifer Parry, Chair of the Access and Inclusion Committee, who came and spoke at the committee meeting and came and spoke tonight. And I want to thank her for her insightful comments that kind of encapsulate why this Part D has been added. The Beverly Hills Commuter Car Park is a multi-storey new build which excludes people with accessibility issues. The staircase at the rear of the new build is the shortest route to the station, but people with accessibility issues can't access it. So they have to actually come out and go to a signalised crossing and cross the road to the other side of the station, which is 400 metres away. I don't think that's good enough. And I don't think anything that we're building in the 21st century should exclude people with accessibility issues. It shouldn't just be a tick and flick. Oh, we've kind of like, oh, you've circumnavigated that. We should be giving everybody respect. And I hope that this complaint actually causes Transport for New South Wales to change their design. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Symington. Do I have any other speakers for this motion?
Yes, I'd like to speak as a seconder. I just wanted to say that it was fantastic being at that Assets and Infrastructure Committee meeting. And fantastic to also hear from our public forum speaker again at this meeting. What an incredible speech talking about how important this is for members of our local community. And thank you so much to Councillor Symington for your advocacy on this issue of people who are experiencing disability in our community. You've served as a fantastic chair of that community, and thank you for your advocacy.
Thank you, Councillor Fakara. Are there any other speakers to this motion at all tonight? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against, I declare that carried. We move over to item ASS 026-23. Do I have a mover for that motion according to what's up on the screen?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that motion, and there is an amendment attached with that to the effect of the construction costs reflecting that tender.
Councillors, the motion is up there on the screen before you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Symington. I'll put the motion. All those in, I'll put it to discussion. If you are going to discuss matters, councillors, just be aware that this is a confidential item. So I would, unless it's extremely necessary, I will need to go into into confidential session if there are questions or statements. Yeah, there being none.
I was just going to ask, could somebody just explain why the change? Or Would that be easy enough?
Councillor Jamieson, good question. It's there just to actually note the name of the tenderer and the price, so that way it's aware and transparent to our community what's happening. Okay. Yep. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against, I declare that carried. Next motion on the agenda is report of the Community and Culture Committee meeting held on the 11th of September 2023, CCL 083-23. I'll pass over to Committee Chair, Councillor Nancy Liu. Do I have a motion, Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before that, the new mayor and the new deputy mayor and the other councillors, thank you for supporting me and electing me as its chair for another term. So today I would like to move that the Community and Culture Committee recommendations for items COM 027 to 23 to 029-23 as detailed in print in the paper being adopted by council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Liu. Do I have a seconder for that motion, Councillor Kaniarski?
Sorry.
Oh, okay. So we've got a mover and seconder. Do we have any discussion on any of those items? There being none, I'll put the motion. Oh, sorry, Councillor Mort. There is.
I'd just like to say a big thank you to the staff for the research that they put in for the name of the new pavilion at Hurstville Oval. Thank you.
Yep. Concur. Thanks, Councillor Mort. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against, I declare that carried. Next item on the agenda is CCL 084-23, Local Government New South Wales Annual Conference. Call for motions. I'll pass over to the Chair of Finance and Governance, Councillor Jamieson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We move the motion, the recommendation, the council review, so that the council confirm motions that were received from councillors for submission to local government New South Wales at the council meeting on 28th of August, that the general manager lodge all proposed motions with local government New South Wales by the due date being 15th of October 2023, and probably want a couple of people to speak on their motion. That's okay.
I'll get a seconder first. Do I have a seconder for that motion, Councillor Marnie? Is there any discussion on this, councillors? Councillor Fakari.
Not discussion, but I thought we had a convention where if somebody pressed the button first, sorry, that they would be the seconder. I noticed that Councillor Hapaha pressed the button, so I think she was the seconder of the motion.
Oh, I missed it.
I'm fine.
You're fine, Councillor Hapaha. I'm happy to recommit it if it's going to cause some sort of stir. But Councillor Marnie, I had you as the seconder. Is there any discussion on the matter?
Well, with respect, Mr. Mayor, I think
yes.
Councillor Ambi Hapaha should have the floor. Thank you. I second it.
It's all right. I've already made Councillor Jamieson as the mover, Councillor Marnie is the seconder. There being no discussion on this item, I'll put the motion.
Sorry, can I don't know if it's Councillor Marnie wanted to speak on his motions, but I did want to make a quick point to one of the motions, if that's okay.
Sure, Councillor Jamieson.
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk quickly about the developer contributions. So I'd like to thank the Director for Planning for bringing it to my attention. After brief discussions, I have learnt that while the state government pushes for development in the face of rising construction costs for infrastructure, they have not increased the developer contribution to keep pace. This leaves council carrying the shortfall of not enough funds to provide for the infrastructure needs of the increased population. As many residents of Mortdale have continuously told me, the traffic congestion and parking in Mortdale is already appalling. The infrastructure doesn't cope with the current population. The Mortdale Master Plan went on exhibition, but questions remain over how enough funds will be generated in the area to cover the actual infrastructure costs to rectify the current issues and then impacts from density increases in the new plan. The state government has left the contribution levy untouched, knowing full well that costs have increased, and I believe we should advocate for a review of this levy. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jamieson. Are there any other speakers for this motion at all tonight? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against, I declare that carried. Next motion is CCL 085-23, applications pursuant to Council Award Discretionary Fund Policy, September 2023. I'll just wait for councillors that have declared an interest to leave the chamber. Councillor Jamieson, over to you.
The recommendation is that the applications for funding pursuant to the Council Awards Discretionary Fund Policy outlined in the report be approved.
Moved by Councillor Jamieson. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Borg. All those, oh, no, I saw the red from the corner of my eye. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against, I declare that carried. Next motion is CCL 086-23, unaudited general purpose financial statements for the year ended 30th of June 2023. Over to you, Councillor Jamieson.
Thank you. The recommendation is just to move the recommendation. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Jamieson, seconded by Councillor Liu. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against, I declare that carried. Next item on the agenda is CCL 087-23, MOU turf wicket utilisations. I'll pass over to the Chair of Assets, Councillor Kaniarski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move CCL 087-23 as per the recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Kaniarski, seconded by Councillor Liu. I'll put it to discussion, although is there any discussion on this item, councillors? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against, I declare that carried. We now move over to notices of motion. First notice of motion being by Councillor Jamieson, NM 052-23. I'll pass over to Councillor Jamieson. Issue with private certifiers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank David Bodigar. I've got that name wrong for a long time. Deborah Mackey and Alison Fury for going out of their way to make a stand so that others may not have to go through that upheaval and experience. It is absolutely abhorrent that at any level of government we turn a blind eye to an elderly woman being pushed out of her own home. Sadly, these are not the only stories that I have heard. It is clear that while the concept of CDCs and certifiers was supposed to speed up developments, unfortunately, it has now come at a price that is too costly. The price is that while one neighbour or developer has the benefit of speed to get a development through, another neighbour or even owner is disadvantaged with not much recourse. It's up to the neighbour to know and report when there is a compliance issue. However, the plans are not provided, so they are unable to know. If they feel there is a non-compliance, then they need to report it to the certifier. In the majority of circumstances, it is the certifier that is supposed to be supervising and ensuring that the plans are enforced in the first place. Unfortunately, there is a conflict of interest with a private certifier as they are paid by the developer or builder. No person is immune from this risk. Not even council, as was discussed recently in the Environment and Planning Committee, that Tracy Street certifier, yes, the one mentioned in ICAP, provided an occupancy certificate when the conditions of consent relating to the voluntary planning agreement had not been met. Even council had to report this issue to the Department of Fair Trading, where it appears to enter a black hole. These are very minor, if any, consequences when a private certifier doesn't do the right thing. The consequence remains with the neighbour and or new owner. A certifier is supposed to ensure compliance. This is not happening in many cases. I appreciate that this will take some time, but we need to keep pushing to ensure that change occurs at a state level. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jamieson. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Marnie. Sorry, I should have taken a seconder before I gave the floor to Councillor Jamieson to speak, but do I have, would you like to say a few words as a seconder, Councillor Marnie?
I know this, Mr. Mayor.
That's it. Is there any other further discussion on this item? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against, I declare that carried. Next notice of motion is Sporting Legacy for Women and Girls. Councillor Liu. Notice of motion 53-23.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My motion, there are three different points in there. So the first A will be that following the federal government's announcement on 19 August 2023 of one of the Australia's biggest comprehensive investment in women's sports with funding and reforms to help more women play sport. Council officers apply for the federal government's new 200 million Play Our Way grants program, which is expected to open in early 2024. The second point is the council officers promote these grant funding opportunities through council's communication channels and networks, including the sport advisory committee, so that there is increased awareness of how community organizations can support women and girls to play in sport. That the program and all facilities supporting women and girls to play sport are clearly identified and allocated accordingly. Should council be successful in obtaining grant funds as part of the Play Our Way program?
That's moved by Councillor Liu. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Mort. Councillor Liu is the mover of the motion. You can now speak on the motion.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Because I just try to refer a bit of story about and a background about that. Everyone remember during August in this year, during the International Women's Soccer Cup, based on their achievement, so the government announced this funding program. I think which is really a good timing to encourage and inspire the women and girls who are attending sports or who are going to attending the sport, because as one of our councillors, Natalie Moore, she's an active open water swimmer, and for me, I'm the parent of a young national level swimmer. We know that how hard as a girl, as a woman, to pursue their goal in the industry. Not only us, we are just one of many those similar background. So that's why when I saw this announcement, I think I really wanted to, from my background, from representing Natalie Moore's achievement in the sport, we want to council to grab this opportunity to really apply for the grants. On behalf of council, and encourage the local sports non-profit or sports organization to apply that funding and grants. Because we know that council, we have our current structure, and the mechanism is called a sports advisory committee. We want the people, we want the professional in the committee give our council advice and really encourage anyone who entitled to apply for the fund really doesn't miss that chance. So that's where my motion is coming from. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Liu. Councillor Mort is the secondary of that motion. Would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, just a couple of things.
Sorry, Councillor Liu.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you for this motion. I think it's very, very important that we get young girls involved in sport, young girls, older girls like myself. You know, we can't encourage females to get out into sport and be active for our mental health, our physical well-being, and I think it's a great thing that we now have this opportunity to apply for a grant to get more women out there in sport. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mort. Any other speakers to the motion tonight? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against, I declare that carried. Next motion on the agenda is establishment of a bush care group in Hurstville Ward. Motion number 054-23. Mover of the motion is Councillor Ben Wang.
Yes, do I have to say?
If you want, I'll put the motion that Councillor Ben Wang is moving the motion. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Lansbury seconds the motion. Councillor Wang.
Yeah, thank you. My motion is for the general manager to compile a report concerning the feasibility of establishing a bush care group in Hurstville Ward, so the volunteers can learn about and help to protect the native flora and the fauna in council's parks and reserves. So, so I would like to thank Lugano Progress Association and Otley Flora and Fauna Conservation Society for giving me the inspiration and encouragement to make Hurstville a better place. So over the past few years, I have had the privilege of volunteering in Council's bush care program. So in recent months, my involvement has deepened as I collaborate closely with the Lugano Progress Association, the Otley Flora and Fauna Conservation Society, and the dedicated Council Bush Care officers. So during my bush care activities in the George River area, I was made acutely aware the lack of tree canopy and the bushland areas in and around Hurstville, comparing to other suburbs. So at the moment, there aren't any official bush care sites in Hurstville Ward. So the situation can be rapidly improved by the involvement of enthusiastic volunteers and expert council staff. So the good news is that our partners from Lugano and Otley share the concerns for Hurstville and share experience as well. So together, actually, we conducted some field investigations and the Timothy Reserve, Compton Field Park, leading to several promising ideas for improving the state of the local bushland. So additionally, enthusiastic volunteers from the George River Association also stand ready to act. So the only missing piece is the establishment of a formal bush care group in Hurstville Ward, which can provide the necessary official guidance and assistance in accordance with the council's process. So councillors, as the previous speaker, Susan, rightly highlighted, the creation of the bush care group in Hurstville promises to bring about much needed social and environmental benefits. So I respectfully urge you to support this motion, actually with a sense of urgency if possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wang. Councillor Lansbury, would you like to say a few words? No? Are there any other further discussion on this motion? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against, I declare that carried. The next motion is notice of motion by Councillor Marnie, NM 055-23, cessation of use of second generation anticoagulant rodenticides. Councillor Marnie, do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Jamieson. Councillor Marnie, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are two main types of rodenticide commonly used in Australia. With first generation anticoagulants, the poison breaks down quickly in the dead animal so that it is relatively safe for a predator to eat. However, with second generation anticoagulants, or SGARS, the poisoning is in the body for a longer time, meaning that if a native animal eats the rodent which has ingested the chemical, it can die. There have been reports of birds, for example, kookaburras, magpies and owls being killed by eating prey which has been poisoned by second generation chemicals. Lizards and snakes are also vulnerable. The respected organisation BirdLife Australia supports restrictions on the use of SGARS, and the Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority is currently reviewing the use of all anticoagulant rodenticides due to their side effects. Other councils such as Clarence Valley and Campbelltown have already banned second generation chemicals. I applaud council staff for the steps they are currently taking to limit exposure of our native fauna to second generation anticoagulants, and look forward to their report which will address the possible cessation of the use of these chemicals. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Councillor Jamieson is the seconder of that motion now. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against, I declare that carried. Next motion is motion by Councillor Kanyarski, NM 056, congratulations to St George Football Club and St George City Youth. Councillor Kaniarski moves the motion. Councillor Smurtley seconds. Councillor Kaniarski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to congratulate two clubs in our local area, one being St George City FC, which plays out of Rockdale Park, but formerly at Barton Park. St George FC were recently promoted to NPL from League One, where they've been playing in the last decade or so. They a rich history is associated with that club, going back to the early 50s, if I understand, and they've always been playing at an elite level. But about 10 years ago or so, they were relegated, and now have made that step back up into NPL, and I think that's fantastic for that club. Secondly, I'd like to congratulate St George City, which is our local club, plays out of Penshurst Park. St George City Youth were playing in the lower division. They had an opportunity a couple of years ago to make the cut for the NPL, but unfortunately, due to COVID, and there were some dates that were associated with cutting off that competition, and the youth didn't make it into the top level football at that stage, but did subsequently, and they were promoted to NPL only about a month or so ago after winning the club championship. The other thing I'd also like to mention is that we now, in our not local government area, but in our St George area, have three NPL clubs, which shows a great sport, particularly football, in our local government area. That is Rockdale, so the two St Georges that I mentioned. But the most impressive thing about St George City was in their youth, 5 teams made it to the final series from the club, and there are 5 teams. So all teams made it to the final series a couple of weeks ago. Unfortunately, 3 of them got knocked out and 2 progressed to grand final, which was played over the weekend. The 13s got done in the last moment of the game, and the 15s, in fact, came home with the premiership. So I'd like to congratulate those guys as well. There was one more thing, but I've forgotten what it was. I should have noted that. But congratulations to those clubs and to those teams.
Thank you, Councillor Kaniarski. Councillor Smurtley would like to.
No.
No? Any other discussion on this motion? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against, I declare that carried. Next item on the agenda is questions with notice. The first question with notice is from Councillor Jamieson regarding certification campaign. Councillor Jamieson, are there any other questions? No? Next item is item 30-23, question with notice, FOGO scheme by Councillor Marnie. Councillor Marnie, any further questions on that? No? There being none. Councillors, the next item on the agenda is a confidential item. And before we move into confidential, there is a process. At this point in time, the meeting will move into a committee of the whole to allow consideration of a matter in closed session in accordance with Section 10A of the Local Government Act. That in accordance with Section 10A of the Local Government Act, Council enter into closed session to discuss, as these items relate to waste collection tender outcomes and commingled recycling processing options. Accordingly, members of the press and public are excluded from the closed session, and access to the correspondence and reports relating to the items considered during the course of the closed session will be withheld. With this meeting being held remotely, we are unable to ask if there are any objections from the audience. Sorry, this meeting is being held in person, so I need to ask if there are any objections from the public for us to go into closed session, but I also need a procedural motion from the floor to move into closed session, councillors.
I'm happy to move on this.
Motion up on the screen to move into closed session by Councillor Smurtley, seconded by Councillor Liu. I'll also ask the General Manager if there have been any written representations or objections from the public.
No, Mr. Mayor, there hasn't.
There being none, I can now put that procedural motion to the floor. Councillors, I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against, I declare that carried. Councillors, I call for a motion to adopt the resolution from closed session. Do I have a motion? Moved by Councillor Kanyarski, seconded by Councillor Lansbury. Do I need to read that out, or is it up on the screen, Vicky? Yeah. Councillors, I'll put that motion. Do I have, all those in favour say aye for that motion. All those against, I declare that carried. There being no other items on the agenda, I declare this meeting closed at 8:36 p.m. Thank you, councillors.